Imagine ICE agents making arrests at your child's school or a family wedding. Well, President-elect Trump plans to make that a reality, according to NBC's reporting. The current policy began in 2011. It was by then ICE Director John Morton. It stopped agents from making arrests in sensitive areas like schools, hospitals, places of worship, or at major life events like weddings or funerals. The prospective new policy follows a recommendation in the influential document Mandate for Leadership 2025, the Conservative Promise, also known as Project 2025, in a section overseen by Ken Cuccinelli, former U.S. Department of Homeland Security official in Trump's first administration. The document calls for the elimination of policies that prohibit ICE personnel from operating in sensitive locations, arguing instead that the agency should rely on the good judgment of officers in the field to avoid inappropriate situations. The Biden administration expanded the definition of sensitive areas to add places like playgrounds, homeless shelters, emergency response centers, and domestic violence shelters. NBC now reporting that the Trump administration, incoming, is vowing to eliminate these restrictions on day one, claiming it will speed up deportations and empower law enforcement. I want to know what you think. This is the basis of today's poll question at SMERCONISH.com. Should immigration enforcement actions be constrained in areas such as schools, medical facilities, places of worship, funerals, and weddings? Joining me now is ACLU lawyer Lee Gallant, a leading public interest lawyer who has argued dozens of civil rights cases during his career, including in the Supreme Court of the United States. In recent years, he's argued some of the nation's most high-profile cases, including a national class action in which he challenged the Trump administration's practice of separating immigrant families at the border. So, Counselor, how big a deal is this? Does it come up routinely, or is this just something that we're discussing in the abstract?
Well, I think that's the question. We're going to see what the Trump administration does. I mean, the reporting is that they're going to get rid of this sensitive areas memo, and we'll see now if they start going after people at hospitals, at schools, weddings, the courthouses, that kind of thing. But if they do, I think that's a very big deal.
I can imagine some who are watching this mulling it over and saying, well, we don't afford that level of protection to others who are having a brush with law enforcement. Why would we do it for the migrant community?
Yeah, well, so I think two things. One is when we talk about this, we need to understand the scope of the Biden administration's policy and what other administrations have done. We're talking about people who are not national security threats, public safety threats, people who have recently crossed the border, who may have sensitive information. For all those types of people, the memo says you may go after them and arrest them. So we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is people, the average migrant may have been here 30 years, contributed, doesn't have a criminal record. Should you go after them at a hospital? Should you go after them at schools? And I think there'll be legal challenges, but beyond that, I think there's lines we shouldn't cross as a society for humanity reasons, but also public policy reasons. If someone has a contagious disease, you want them going to the emergency room. You don't want them not going because they fear being arrested. If they're a witness to a crime and they're going to come testify to put someone very serious in jail, right, with a serious crime, you want them showing up as a witness. But if the ICE agents are going to be standing at the courthouse looking to arrest someone, then they're not going to show up to be a witness. So I think it's bad public policy to say to migrants, wherever you go, we're going to be there, whether it's the hospital, your child's school, or a courthouse.
What about the site of a public demonstration, such as a march, a rally, or a parade? I mean, I can imagine that there will be demonstrations in opposition to Trump, the plan for mass deportation, and theoretically then ICE would be precluded at an event like that from making arrests if they were appropriate, meaning if there were individuals there who were wanted.
Yeah, so I think that is something that's not explicitly, as far as I know, listed in the Biden memo, at least. This country has a cherished history of protests and the First Amendment. So I think that raises serious concerns when you're going to inhibit First Amendment rights. I don't know how the Trump administration is going to handle that, but I would be very concerned if the Trump administration is going to try and inhibit all protests.
In the current memo, that which took effect by Alejandro, Secretary Mayorkas's signature on the Biden watch, I want to read one sentence. The fundamental question is whether our enforcement action would restrain people from accessing the protected area to receive essential services or engage in essential activities. The mindset is one of the same behind sanctuary cities, which is you don't want people not reporting. You don't want people not calling the police or seeking medical attention, et cetera, because there would be a larger societal cost. That's the thinking. You get the final word.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to focus on that. I mean, you need a balance in law enforcement always, not just for humane reasons, but for public policy reasons. If you're trying to convict a murderer and it's a migrant who saw the murder and is a witness, you want that migrant showing up at the courthouse to testify. So there's always concerns you have to balance. And I think it's right to make those kinds of calls.
Lee Gallant, thank you for your expertise. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
Checking in on social media reaction. This is going to be really interesting to follow this issue. Really interesting to follow this issue. Stuart, oh please, Crimea River, now we don't care, don't want to be hunted. Simple, don't break the laws in coming here. You can say the same thing regarding other criminals. I just made that observation, by the way. How about the idea of caring about those who respect the law and do the proper thing in applying for immigration? I did make clear, right, the exceptions that exist to this, lest you all think that there's going to be someone wanted for murder or a potential terrorist. The enforcement action involves a national security threat. There's imminent risk of death, violence, or physical harm to a person. Those cases would not be subject to this limitation by the current policy that exists. We shall see. Those first 100 days are going to be interesting. You still have time to vote on this. I don't know which way this is going to go. Should immigration enforcement actions be constrained? Should limitations be placed on ice in areas such as schools and medical facilities, places of worship, funerals, and weddings? Go to So there's the results so far at SMERCONISH.com. 29,833 votes cast. Should immigration enforcement actions be constrained in areas such as schools, medical facilities, places of worship, funerals, and weddings? 70-30. I'm kind of surprised that it was so lopsided. 70% say yes. You should not have enforcement actions at, a funeral or a parade or a kid's school, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that surprises me. 70-30 surprises me. It's going to be very interesting to see if the reports are accurate, and the Trump administration decides that they're not going to be restrained as previous administrations have been. Here's some social media reaction to today's program. What do we have? They are here illegally. How is there a safe place? Oh my God, they will not barge in and grab a student. My own take on this is I'd rather there not be an arrest made at somebody's funeral. But a parade, or what were the other categories? Parade, demonstration, or I can just see this. If mass deportations begin in earnest in the first 100 days of the new Trump administration, I can see that there will be social protest. So ICE would have to, by the current standard, stand by, if they had knowledge, that individuals who are protesting the mass deportations were themselves potentially subjected to them. They would have to stand by and do nothing about it. That seems a bridge too far. Real quick, I spoke too long. One more. I'll make it really fast. What do we got? Absolutely baffling situation on one hand. Well, it's something for sure. Yeah, we'll see. That's the best I can do. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.